The Library of Alexandria was not just a building, it was a vision, a dream conceived in ancient Egypt that knowledge could be gathered, preserved, and shared with the world. Its walls were said to have held hundreds of thousands of scrolls, manuscripts, and records, some of which no longer exist anywhere else in history. But despite its towering legacy, the library vanished, burned, lost, and erased. And the question still haunts historians. Who destroyed it, and why? Founded in the early 3rd century BCE under the reign of Ptolemy I or his successor Ptolemy II, the Library of Alexandria was part of a larger institution called the Mouseion, an academic temple dedicated to the Muses, the goddesses of the arts and sciences. The library aimed to collect all the world's knowledge. Ambassadors and travelers passing through Alexandria were compelled to surrender any books they carried. These were then copied, and while the originals were often kept, the copies were returned. In this way, the library grew into a massive depository of ancient wisdom. The scholars who studied there were among the most brilliant minds of their age. Mathematicians, astronomers, poets, philosophers, they all found refuge in the scroll-filled halls of the library. It's said that over 400,000 scrolls were stored at one point, covering subjects from medicine to literature, from mathematics to geography. It was more than a place of reading. It was a sanctuary of civilization. And yet, one of the greatest mysteries in history surrounds its destruction. How could such a treasure, once the pride of an empire, vanish without leaving a single definitive account of its fall? Some point to Julius Caesar. In 48 BCE, during his civil war against Pompey, Caesar arrived in Alexandria and became embroiled in local power struggles. To defend himself, he ordered ships in the harbor to be set ablaze. That fire, according to some ancient sources, spread to parts of the city, including the library. Strabo, a Greek historian who visited Alexandria decades later, wrote about the Mouseion but made no clear mention of the library, raising the possibility that much of it had already been destroyed by then. Others argue that it wasn't Caesar, but rather later Roman emperors or Christian zealots who sealed its fate. After all, Alexandria became a center for religious tension during the decline of paganism. The Roman Empire eventually adopted Christianity, and many of its followers saw classical texts as pagan and dangerous. The famed philosopher Hypatia, associated with the library and a symbol of Greek philosophy, was brutally murdered in 415 CE by a Christian mob. The library, or what remained of it, may have been lost in the same ideological fury. Then there's the Muslim conquest of Alexandria. In 642 CE, a controversial account, often attributed to later sources, claims that the Caliph Omar ordered the burning of the library's remaining scrolls, arguing that if the texts agreed with the Quran, they were redundant, and if they disagreed, they were heretical. However, many modern scholars dispute the authenticity of this claim, suggesting that by the time the Arabs arrived, the library was long gone. The truth is likely more complicated. The Library of Alexandria may not have been destroyed in a single cataclysmic event, but through a series of gradual losses, fires, neglect, war, and ideological cleansing. It may have had several branches across Alexandria, some of which suffered different fates at different times. Each incident shaved away part of the treasure until nothing remained. And yet, even in its destruction, the library lived on, in legend, in hope, in the enduring dream that knowledge could unify humanity. The story of its burning is not just a tale of loss, but a reflection of humanity's eternal battle between enlightenment and ignorance. As we continue to explore the enigma of the Library of Alexandria, we are forced to confront the reality that history often folds into myth, and myth into propaganda. The fragments that remain, quotes, footnotes, scattered references, are like shadows on a wall, each hinting at what once was, but never clearly illuminating the truth. The idea of one single event causing its downfall is almost romantic. Fires sweeping through ancient scrolls, the screams of terrified scholars, the smoke rising over a harbor lined with ships. It evokes powerful imagery. But when examined more closely, it's far more likely that the library's destruction was a drawn-out process, stretched over centuries, and shaped by multiple hands and agendas. The first serious blow, possibly during Caesar's siege, might have burned a portion of the collection housed in the warehouses near the port. But that wasn't the entire library. Other parts, like the daughter library housed in the Serapeum, an ancient temple complex, continued to function. But over time, as political regimes shifted and power realigned, priorities changed. The successors of the Ptolemies no longer shared the same obsession with knowledge. Funding diminished. Scholars moved elsewhere. Wars came and went. The Serapeum itself was eventually destroyed by a Christian mob in 391 CE under orders from Emperor Theodosius I, as part of a campaign to eliminate pagan worship. Some argue that any remaining scrolls were burned during this time. But again, solid proof is lacking. There is something haunting about the way the library's story echoes the rise and fall of civilization itself. At the height of its glory, it represented the best of human aspiration. And at the time of its fall, it reflected the vulnerabilities of our institutions, how they can be brought down not just by fire, but by fear, apathy, and politics. What would have happened if the Library of Alexandria had survived? Would the Dark Ages have been shorter? Would discoveries we credit to much later periods have occurred centuries earlier? These are unanswerable questions, but their very asking shows the weight of the loss. Perhaps most tragic is the knowledge that the scrolls weren't just dry facts. They were the voices of ancient peoples, poems, philosophies, maps of the stars, cures for diseases, records of extinct civilizations, and theories of the cosmos. Their disappearance is a reminder that history is fragile. That knowledge must be defended. Today, digital libraries and global networks echo the ambitions of the Library of Alexandria. And yet, censorship, misinformation, and anti-intellectualism remain threats. The fate of the library serves as a timeless warning that once knowledge is lost, it may never be recovered. That in every age, we are only ever a few steps away from losing the light. The burning of the Library of Alexandria may never be fully solved, but its story endures, etched not in stone, but in the longing of every generation to preserve what matters, to seek the truth, to guard the flame.